computer science, technology in general, is not going anywhere. In fact, it's steady might be the hard part, but it's growing for sure. And it's a matter of catching those trends and understanding what your value is in that space.
All right. So now we're going to bring on Reinier. So let's add him. Reinier, how you doing?
Hey, great guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. So VP of Getty Images, again, like we said, pretty much everyone's familiar with the business that you work at, but they want to get to know you a little bit. So tell us a little bit about your journey. What's brought you to all the way up to VP of Engineering over at Getty?
Yeah, I mean, a very open question that, at my age, it could take a while to get through the whole story, but I'll keep it as tight as I can. I think what's made it interesting is that it's not been a linear ride. It's not been a straight by any stretch of the imagination. In high school, I thought I was going to be a music major. I also was really into sports. I thought that might be a direction I go. From music, after that, I took a few years off, worked in a warehouse just to make some money and kind of find out who I was, and play music for the joy of it. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking I'll come back to university at some point, and what I really want to get into is AI, and take a trip down memory lane with me, and maybe Shane before your time. But this was science fiction biology.
Are you saying I'm old? I've only pointed that at Shane.
He's the salt and pepper. That's what's going on.
I'm old.
Yeah, we're going to start off on that wrong foot there. But anyway, it wasn't a career choice per se. It was make believe. It was science fiction. That said, there was this draw to me, and it wasn't that I was obsessed with the pop culture part of it. I just thought, this is imminent, and this is going to be our future pretty soon. So I started actually thinking the psychology aspect of it was where I wanted to go, and thinking, having seen it in sports, having seen the power of the mind, I accumulated textbooks full of questions that I wanted to solve. And so I went into university for psychology, and every class I took, I ended up with more pages of questions and zero answers. And looking at the trajectory of my life, and I was probably going to be about 90 by the time I started to answer some of these questions. And I'm a little bit more of a immediate gratification kind of guy, so it was looking grim until I stumbled upon a computer science course in my early studies, and this brought me back to tinkering away the old Atari systems and the old Commodores that we had growing up, and just that ability to tinker, to build something as simple as it was back then. It just lit this spark in me, and I knew that I was going to go all in on computer science. You ask a question, you get an immediate answer, like faster than you could even say it. You got the answer, and so this was extremely alluring to me. So I went all in on it. Went through a couple different schools to try to find the programs that I wanted to get out into the workforce as quickly as possible. It wasn't about the study, it was about the application and starting to find my way in my career. So I spent a lot of time at startups, the earlier, smaller mom and pop shops, and finally stumbling on a company called Verity, which was bought by Autonomy, which was later bought by HP. And this was a company that their enterprise product was a search engine. And what drew me to it immediately was the marriage of software and technology with the people side and the psychology aspect that I had been training in, and marrying those two together. How better to connect with between a computer and a brain, which is through then the search engine, right? You're not talking about straight structured queries. You're talking about unstructured and creative queries, and I found this fascinating because it was, especially at that time, that the way I saw it, not the UI side of it, but the deeper level of connection between humans and computers. And so
when was this? Like what give an idea of an age, because people might hear that and they're like, really, bro? Search
Yeah.
engine? Yeah, we've had those. But this was, earlier than
Right.
3 weeks ago. So at what point were you starting to see search as this big function?
Yeah, it should have been about the turn of the millennium.
Okay.
So very early, 2000 timeframe, just slightly after that. Um, Search engines existed. Google had just started to build. They were selling the Google appliance. I don't know if you guys remember that or ever heard of it. It's a plug and play. You buy a box, you plug it into your network, and it indexes your documents for you, and you can search through your PDFs or your emails. It was pretty cool. The competing offering was something like what Verity was doing, which is they'll come in and install it, and they'll run it, and they'll have search engineers kind of tune it, predominantly for internal search. So again, your document search, it wasn't so much about e-commerce at the time, although when the eBays and stuff started coming out shortly after and being successful, it exploded.
That just makes me feel like you're talking about a fax machine coming from somebody during middle school. By the time you were doing that, I'm like, are we talking about fax machines here for a second? I'm not positive. I know the healthcare industry is on a mission to destroy fax machines because they still exist, and that's still a huge resource in that world right now, which is hilarious. But I resonate with that deeply, where it's like in college, I also went to school for psychology originally, and one of the things that was the end result of it was like the best psychologists are the ones that ask the best questions. So you walking away with a lot of questions was you at peak level. That's like peak PhD level of like endless series of questions, and that's it. Versus, when you were like, I need some instant gratification. I need some actual answers. Let's get her done.
Right.
The early days was search, and how did that then take you into where you're at now?
Yeah, so I like I said, I got an opportunity at Verity, and this is something I implore new early career folks to do, which is f around and find out. And back then it was go from one job role to another job role to another job role, and it's not a vertical climb, it's all horizontal, and you get to this point, and you can see it on my resume. It was like 2 years. Okay, I'll do a client services, like a help desk type of job for 2 years, and I'll work my way up, and I'll master it, within that space. Now, apply for the next role, even if it's lateral, even if it's below what you were doing, just to get that exposure early on. And my first decade I was just like jack of all tradesing it at that point, just to try to get as much exposure to the full life cycle of software development. So I knew what I was going to spend my career doing.
Let me ask you this though, because nowadays you're saying stay in the same role, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, and then transition and go out and learn this new thing. And I think what's really common in the industry today, and what we're seeing a lot, especially when we're in this age of instant gratification, and we're in this age of like 2-day delivery or same-day delivery and Uber Eats and all of this fun stuff. I'm seeing new college grads expecting promotions, job changes, all of that within the first three months, 6 months. And it's crazy seeing this like rapid, really fast transition that I personally believe is stunting growth. I think it's actually harming people instead of rewarding them. I am curious on your thoughts on that, where is that fine line between being in a role where we're optimizing and we're learning versus shooting ourselves in the foot by making that transition too early?
Yeah, well, it's even, I would say it starts even earlier. Taylor, you talk about college sports, and I don't know what that journey looked like, and I can imagine if football was your sport based off your shirt.
Yes.
In the U.S., it's probably get in early and focus on that sport, because if you miss a season, other kids are going to camp, and they're specializing very quickly. And my sports, I played a little bit of ice hockey, played soccer, got into football, depending on where your listeners are. As much variety, and I think that range is what you're seeing. Shane, I think is this like what you want kids to go through, you want new hires to go through, you want experience in different aspects of life before you get to that specialization. And you can look at my, my resume in the last 16 years, it looks like it's been very specialized. I've been at Getty Images the whole time in search for over 25 years, but it's within there, it's been such a variety of roles. And whether that's to new kids or even old kids like myself, is just try different things. Yeah, you're going to fail a few of them. Hopefully you do, because that's where you learn. It's not you just get promotion every time you do something. What are you learning in that case? You're going to get very entitled very quickly. You're going to be for some serious disappointments.
Yeah, I would agree. And yes, and I would agree that there is a push to, as soon as you figure out what sports you like, you've got to go all in. And, I have kids who are hitting that age and they're coming to me, when should I give up on basketball because I want to just focus on football? Or, I think I should probably stop doing baseball because basketball is my sport or whatever. And I keep telling them, no, if you enjoy doing it, keep doing it. Keep learning, figuring out the hand-eye coordination, speed, everything else. And it'll translate within reason. I mean, hitting a baseball and shooting a basketball are not the exact same thing, but there's a lot of hand-eye coordination or whatnot that does translate, which to your point in your career. So how does that, and I'm going to bring something up that I think is interesting as we talk about your story. And now you have, how old's your son? Junior?
He's 21. Yeah. Fourth year. Yeah.
Would you say fourth year?
Yeah.
Okay. So fourth year, so senior in college, getting ready to enter the workforce, and also interested in computer science, correct?
He is. Yeah. Yeah. Somehow I haven't made it look too bad. I guess it's always a sign of success.
Yeah. So how are you instructing him? Like, what are some of the, hey, son, I was where, I know probably where you're sitting. You're like, it was just yesterday I was in your shoes. And he's like, Dad, it was not yesterday.
You had hair at my age.
So
that's fear.
Yeah. So what are you doing from a dad's perspective? Because we talk all the time to leaders in the engineering space like you, or in the product space, and we ask what's their, how do you look for someone in an interview and so on? Well, now it's coming from dad. So what are the things you're telling him about building his resume, what to do in an interview, how to find a job, etc.?
Yeah. I mean, my dad, he's a geologist, and there's a good reason why I am not a geologist today. I love my dad, but anytime he would try to explain his world to me, it was, you're talking about rocks. And, I appreciate that we're living on a big rock and they've been around for millions of years, but it's not working for me. And so, not that I set out to try to, convince my son to go into this field, but having, look, living in Calgary, it's a big oil and gas city, probably similar to Nashville, Houston. I lived in for a while as well.
Yep.
And when you're a city where you've got 80%, 70% of the jobs and the money is coming from a single sector, and a sector that's volatile. And we've been through this growing up, where in the 80s, all of a sudden my dad lost his job. It was a downturn. Everyone was laid off. My dad was baking muffins at the local college to try to make ends meet. And then, 3 years later, oil price of barrel goes up. He's gainfully employed again, and everything was good. And just seeing these ups and downs, I tried to instill a sense of forward looking into my kids. Look at what you want to do. What kind of lifestyle do you want to have growing up when you get out there? What are the trends that look like they're growing and not so unstable? Maybe that's my bias. Maybe kids are more flexible and they can handle those ups and downs. But to me, it was how I grew up. It was such a jarring experience every time. I wanted to play hockey. All of a sudden, my dad couldn't afford to put me in hockey, so he pulled me out of it. And then 3 years later, go ahead and go back into it. Well, sorry, 3 years as a youth, you missed the boat. And so I wanted stability for my kids and for my family. At the same time, a steady growth. And computer science, technology in general is not going anywhere. In fact, it's steady might be the hard part, but it's growing for sure. And it's a matter of catching those trends and understanding what your value is in that space. And so, with my son, I said, look, I've been through .com era. I've been through various booms and busts within technology, but the underlying, let's call it, water level keeps rising, right? There's more and more technology than there was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But there's a lot of jobs that aren't around anymore in this space. There's a lot of work that's we used to do manually that, the fax makers, they're all hopefully moved on to something else. At Getty Images, we went from analog photography to all digital, and that was like there was a specific time when that happened, and people had to make decisions about whether that was a trend or a phase, or if we were actually going all in on digital. And so I tried to instill the same thing. My son graduating, I would say, look at the AI boom, look at the data science boom. I recognize what I'm hiring for and the skill sets that I'm looking for, and how hard some of those are to find, and how lucrative they are. But again, there's the big boom in machine learning engineers. Well, how long will that last? Probably it'll end before he's fully graduated and highly functioning in this space. So you got to look past that. It can't be about the how. It's got to be about the why.
You know what I find to be really funny is there's this huge conversation around the advancements in AI, what's going to be needed, why it's going to be needed. And part of me wants to ask, like, is there a world where there's somebody that goes to school for psychology and learns how to do prompt engineering better than anyone else, and they learn how to have computer literacy because they're able to ask the right questions, and all of a sudden this comes full circle where like one day where it's like the psychologist ends up being one of the very advanced engineers coming out of school, with how all of these LLMs and these prompts and everything is starting to get stitched together, which I find to be really fascinating. But when you talk to your son about what you believe to be kind of like the next generation type of roles, the ones that are going to be the most in demand over the course of the next 5 years, what are you saying to him?
Yeah, I mean, like you look at various industries and how quickly machine learning, artificial intelligence is accelerating roles in that space. And you can look at it, the copy editors, you can look at it from, even surgeons and machinists, and you pick your sector, and it's encroaching very quickly in a lot of spaces. But what you're seeing on the resources side is there's a culling that's happening, and it's like this snake that's coming after the bottom 10%. And right now you're looking at efficiencies on your team, and you're thinking, well, there's no way I can replace so and so because they're my principal engineer, and they bring so much to the table for at least the next 10 years. This person is, I'd build a team around this person. And then you kind of go down your team ranking, and you're like, well, these people are really important because they solve problems in a way that no one else can do. And you get near the bottom, and it's like, well, is this person just velocity at this point? They're not bringing novel ideas to, they're just helping take whatever your bandwidth is, your throughput, and they're amplifying that a little bit. Well, that's a tough spot to be in. You're the most vulnerable to automation in that case. And so what I tell my son Kieran is, first off, he's a high achiever. He's an overachiever. He's going for volleyball in college, and so he's found a scholarship to go play volleyball. He wants, he's finally made his way to starter by his 4th year, and he treats his academics the same way as athletics, and he wants to be in that top 10 percentile. So it's great. Like, you're striving for just always being ahead of the curve, and I think that in general is fine. We've got a long pipeline before that 10% becomes 20%, becomes 30% in any given sort of subsection of the sector. And I think it's recognizing this wave that's coming. But again, that's the stick. The carrot is you're looking for where your value add is. And so, like, for me, it was connecting people with data in a way, and finding, like, not in the visual sense. I'm terrible with UI. but in a way of, getting to the psyche of what they're looking for, in the way that, early Google could decipher it in, one or two keywords. Today it's natural language, it's agents, agentic computing, it's these much more intelligent ways of communicating, all trying to get at the same problem, which is how do we get into the head of this person on the keyboard or on their mobile and give them what they want. And that's search is that, but search is, that's now everywhere. Every time you interact with this computer, it's the same way. And so I'm trying to give my son the same kind of guidance. Look what you want to contribute. What's your passion? Where does your passion take you? And then try to marry it up with where you see this, this sort of evolving trend of, the glacier or the wave that's coming at it from the other end.
I think, at least for me, I resonate a lot as you describe. I'm picturing the snake, right? And it's the snake that's coming through. And yeah, to your point, it snags up the bottom, and it's not. It sounds so rude, right? But it does. It snags up the bottom that is just, kind of doubling the effort. But they're not critically thinking. They're not rising to the top. And so, as you look at your son, and it's so important, you're like, look, sports was one place where you found a way to compete, and you figured out over a long stretch of time, what do you have to do to be the cream, right? The starter on the team, or to get the scholarship. And then school, same thing. How do you rise to the top of your school specifically? It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a national merit, but in your school, you figured out how to, in a lot of ways, it is like the survival of the fittest, to be the top 10% most fittest and actually contribute the most to the team, to the school, to the class, to the band, whatever it was. And by doing that, you're going to figure out how to do that if you're in computer science or whatever, domain, if you will, that you enter in. And I think that's an important lesson for everyone to understand, that people who are afraid of AI, make sure you're not the bottom 10%, because for the next 5 or 10 years, that's what it's going to do first. And then it'll come after the next 10%. Because I think that's a great way of thinking about, for the fear of AI is going to take everyone's job. Right. It'll take the bottom 10 for sure. And then the next 10, but it's going to slowly get to that top. Like you're likely not going to get there. Yeah. So how did that transfer? I got to ask you. So we're talking a lot about AI, Getty Images. So you're like, all right, so pictures. Well, everyone right now is going, well, yeah, but I don't even need to take a picture anymore. I can just generate a picture. How has Getty figured out a way to go, well, if we were just still analog photos, we would be long dead. So we moved to digital. Well, now we've got a whole new age, which is AI generated. What is Getty doing to make sure that they're staying ahead of that curve?
Yeah, I mean, that's another loaded question there. I mean, it goes back to, like I said, that at first that digital transformation, and our CEO came from Kodak, and so firsthand exposure to, your business is going great. However, there's this new disruptor on the scene, and what's it going to do? What's it going to mean for you? And I think he's been pretty public about his journey through where, he was pretty adamant that this was not going away. We'd either get on board or get swallowed up, and we know how that turned out. Getty Images went through that and went all in on digital. Getty Images again looked at what was happening 20 years ago. Microstock was coming out, and this was not generated, but it was like for $1 or $2 you could get user content. So it wasn't necessarily studio shots, but it was, anyone with a SLR camera could go out and take pretty decent photography. Or if you did a photo shoot for as a marketing company, you had 3 photos that they used for their material. Well, the other 80 are sitting there. You typically would throw them away. So what iStock Photo did was come around and say, look, we've got a marketplace for that. Let's put all that content that hadn't been consumed into this pool, and we can share it amongst each other. It was just for creatives to share content. And then they realized, well, someone needs to pay for the servers to run. So maybe if we sold them for $1 You get credits. You know, this whole system back 20 years ago, you started making millions off of just selling photos for, you know, $1 or $2. Getty recognizes this as again a major disruptor in the space. Like, by many accounts, those photos look very similar to the stuff we have. Okay, maybe not the stuff where you've hired a plane and you've rented it for a day and you've hired, you know, 80 models to sit there and act in various poses. Those are very expensive, high production shoots, but you know what? A lot of life isn't like that, and there's a lot of content that anyone can capture from a photo. And so they recognize that trend, and obviously went and acquired iStock Photo.
Right.
A few years later, Unsplash, here's free content coming out. So it's not even for $1. It's just anyone can upload stuff to there. And yeah, you're going to drop a little bit in quality each time you go down to one of these price tiers, but there's content and there's a market for that content. So you can either resist it and pretend it doesn't exist, and then hope for the best. But we know how that's going. Like, we can see that market is growing and growing, and so it's you know, naive to think that you're just going to hang on to what we do best and it'll endure. So no, that's not the case. And so when we started seeing, you know, the computer vision, AI generated, AI modified content starting to come out, it's absolutely a disruptor to our space. Like, there's no doubt about it. A lot of our competition allows the stuff to come through. We accept some of that content. We have a generator on Getty Images as well. I think that there's that future where both can exist.
Yeah.
The stance that Getty takes is, look, we've got artists, contributors, people whose livelihood is creating this content, and they're creating it from, like, you know, a lot of the editorial side is from real people. They're taking photos of real people, like that, you know, whether it's, you know, Trump or Taylor Swift, or you pick your favorite celebrity. You've got that's authentic content that people are looking for. This actually happened.
Yep.
Right. And there's a tremendous amount of value in having that seal of authenticity, that, like you said, that watermark of Getty Images on there. It stands for a lot. Like, it's that's the brand. That's what people are looking for, to feel like they when they report it, when they show this photo on their website, that they know that it's authentic. They know they're not being sold one thing that it may not be.
Yep.
Especially when we're being flooded with AI right now, when we're being flooded with content that is just not real. And it is challenging to understand, like, what am I seeing? Why am I seeing it? And can I trust it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So how did that, now I've got to move into I've wanted to talk about this for like the last, you know, since we started. How'd you get into ultra marathons? Because Shane started us off with, hey, what's harder, 100-mile race or 5 kids? Well, said that for a reason, because you run, I shouldn't say you run ultra marathons. How'd you get into that? And are you crazy? Are you sane?
No, well, I don't know that the two are necessarily mutually exclusive, but I mean, look, I think physical activity and sports have always been a big part of my life. At early, you know, I started having kids too, you know, 20 odd years ago, and it's really tough to balance, you know, a high functioning job, high functioning kids, a family, making all these things work. And yet, at my core, I need to be active. I need to be involved in something like this. It helps me get a sweat going, helps me feel like I'm not just been sitting in a chair for 10, 12 hours a day. And so I began riding my bike to work, right? And I lived about 20 miles from the office, and I'd ride my bike there, and I'd ride my bike home, and then on this old clickety mountain bike. And then every now and then I'd have someone pass me, and I was like, this little competitive side, I'd be like, oh, not today. And I, you know, make sure it turned into, like, we call it a category 6 race. So Cat 5 is official racing, Cat 6 is everything off the books. And it was fun. And I was just, you know what, I got a great workout, and it didn't interrupt my family life. I could get home. I felt better before it. In the morning, I felt clear of head. And I got really into bike racing. And so next thing I know, I'm buying a road bike. Next thing I know, I'm upgrading that to carbon fiber. And then, tens of thousands of dollars later, I'm in, 5 category upgrades and kind of seeing all the local racing scene. And then in a few crashes where you start to question,
Yep.
why am I doing this actually? Like the risk reward is starting to be challenged. Yeah. And so I dabbled in running. My wife, when I met her, was a very good runner. She's national level in Canada. And so just being able to run with her was motivation to keep at it. I started running marathons with her, and I was like, actually, the longer the distance, the more I enjoy these and the more competitive I am. And so the natural, where your head goes, like, well, if I can run 42K or 26 miles, maybe I could do that twice. And you know what? We've got dogs that love to be in the outdoors. Let's go do some trail stuff. And yeah, before you know it, you start watching YouTube documentaries on Leadville and
Barclays. How about the
Barkley.
Barclays?
I know. You start getting into these, and you're like, well, let's just see what that takes to get into that. So yeah, here we are.
Yeah. So you're nuts.
Being delusional.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The longer it is, the more fun it is. And I'm like, oh, wow, I think the exact opposite. The shorter it is, the more I would do it.
Coming from a man that says that he likes instant gratification. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not going 100 miles. What's your best story from your ultra marathon? Have you lost toenails?
Oh my gosh, that's a given. I think when you're first starting long distance running, that's just guaranteed. And then it's about, so funny story. I actually have an Instagram account dedicated to my toes called Ren's Toes. So
And the viewership just
and
plummeted.
he just said
we won't post a link in the show notes.
this entire thing is a link below to the feet pics. The feet pics. This is a feet pic situation.
All right, so for the viewers who are still with us,
does it have a Getty Images tag? Yeah. We need to know that these feet are authentic.
This is authentically my missing toenails. So where's we'll kind of wrap it up with this. Where is Getty Images headed? Like, where do you see it going in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one. I think like I was kind of alluding to, there's a marriage between the traditional photography, videography, and the AI influenced version of that. The tooling around it is really amazing. The things you can do today. I mean, you see it in memes, you see it all over the place where you start off with an original, and the explosion of people being able to take that stuff and make more, be creative with that content. And I think that this is, you talked about how anyone can go in now and prompt engineer. You can build a website through ChatGPT. You can build a photo of a landscape with unicorns flying through it. You can do almost anything like that. It's just a matter of teaching, like the same way that Google taught us how to search with 1 or 2 keywords and get the results you want. It's educating the masses now on how to create the content. And so Getty Images has hundreds of millions of the original source of the material, right? And so and continues to, and it's not a static collection. What's interesting and creative and novel today is not the same as tomorrow. AI is going to learn off of what you've already done.
Mm-hmm.
And try to help you build tools around that. Whereas real world photographers are out there today, like the King's March, or they're looking at what's going on in the Middle East and in Europe. These are things that are really happening. And so there's a combination of that creative expression and an entire planet that's learning how to think differently in how they get content and how they create content. And so it's pretty exciting and how we fit into that picture.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, no. And so last question, we ask a lot of people this. Good to get your take on it. For someone who likes to run 100 miles at a time, maybe no one's going to listen because you're insane. But what are you watching on Netflix?
What am I watching on Netflix? So we just watched, let's see. So we love our British crime dramas, my wife and I. we'll sit and we'll binge a few of those every year. I think it's not Netflix. I think it's in Prime, but we watched this one called Eden on this. It's an interesting one with Jude Law, where it's this island. It's based off a true story. This stranded Germans in the 1930s that landed in the Galapagos and created this little colony there. Half the people end up murdered. So it's pretty interesting.
Jude Law, he's good. Anything with Jude Law is pretty good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Never heard of that or seen that though, so that's gonna have to get added to the bucket list.
All right, there you go.
I watched Hangover last week.
I'm really loving the new Robin Hood that came out recently. There's an episode 4.
Netflix?
I don't remember, man. There's so many of these streaming apps. It might be Peacock, it might be Apple, it might be Prime, it might be Hulu, it might be Disney. I have no clue. It's one of them.
All right.
But my TV remembers because it shows up as most recently watched. So I go ahead and click that.
All right. Path of Least Resistance. All right. So Reinier, I want to thank you so much. If for those listening who are excited, want to join your team, connect with you, how can they do so?
Yeah, you can, my LinkedIn profile is up to date. I do check messages on there. Instagram, Reinier Paauwe is, the cleaner Instagram, not the other one. No one goes, I don't send anyone there.
Nope.
Yeah, those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me.
All right. So everyone go check out his toes on Instagram or connect with him on LinkedIn either. It's good.
Become a monthly subscriber.
You're the one.
His OnlyFans account. All right. Oh, wow, this derailed. All right, so Reinier, want to thank you a ton for joining us. Reinier Paauwe, who is the VP of Engineering at Getty Images. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with your son and on his journey. Good luck to him. We'll say that directly to him. And for everyone else, comment, like, subscribe, do all the stuff you do on YouTube and all the other socials. So for everyone, thanks for joining, and we will be back next week. Goodbye.